Hello, everybody. It's Richard from NTI here. I'm bringing you a CPI, CPCI, and CPPI tutorial video around the new exam software that's very recently been released for the November 2020 exam. We are moving online. I say we, the IPA, are moving online with remote invigilation and online software, following their elder cousin, the Joint Board, in that respect. What is important to note is this video is specifically going to cover the use of the software, what you need to know, hints and tips on how to use it. I'm not going to go into any detail around remote invigilation, not least because at the time of filming, that is not available yet, and you'll get all that information from the IPA. This is specifically to help our students or anyone who gets their hands on this webinar in respect of how to use the software. And I'll give you some hints and tips as we go through. So make a start. Let's recap where we are. The CPI, the CPCI, and CPPI exams, as run by the IPA, depending on which ones go ahead at which sitting, will all be run online. ICSA, as you can see from this email, are providing the online software, the online platform. We've recently received the links, and our students and any students sign up for the November sitting in 2020 will have received their first link to use it. Slightly frustratingly, the software only allowed one attempt, and you only had about 5 days to use it, at which NTI, having the experience around the Joint Board exams and the difficulties with moving from a written exam to an online exam, we heavily campaigned that the IPA need to provide students enough time to be at least familiar with the software, but probably more importantly, comfortable and confident with how to use it. We were hopeful that there would be some sort of online platform where you could practice as many times as you like, but alas, the best we have at the minute is all students have now received a second link to practice. So, and from my experience, having had a couple of attempts on it, having used it a couple of times, it becomes a bit more straightforward and relatively easy to use. But I'll talk you through some of the little pitfalls as we go through. Going forward after November 2020, NTI will continue to campaign for maybe some sort of online website where you can access the software and practice as much as you like. And I guess the dream is to have some sort of system where you can log on as many times as you like, and we as a tuition provider can upload mocks or maybe 4 or 5 older CPI papers where you can practice lots of exams on the software. So watch this space on that. And if the IPA are unable to do that, or ICSA are unable to do that, then we'll find ways of creating a sort of duplicate software that will allow you to practice in some way going forward. But for those in the exam in November 2020, this video is going to give you hopefully a good understanding of the software and maybe some things that you hadn't spotted going forward. So, first things first, you'll receive this link. You just click on the link. My first tip is make sure you open it in Chrome or in Edge. Do not use Internet Explorer, which is soon going to be defunct anyway. But don't use that. There's some issues with it isn't compatible basically. But if you try to use the table format, which is important numbers as to be discussed on this webinar, doesn't allow you to input data, which is going to be a disaster. And I presume at the exam, for the exam this year, they will not be using Explorer. So use Edge or Chrome, and you'll be in a situation where you are able to bring up this. This is the front sheet of the exam, which I expect will be identical to what you'll see in the real exam, and it guides you through what the exam set out. So it goes through part A, B, C, D, and guides you through the exam format. It then gives you some notes to tell you it's based on law as at the 1st of January. References to the Act are 86. References to the rules are rules 1986 as amended, which actually, that's what it said on the front of the exam last year, which is technically wrong. The insolvency rules 1986 are not amended. They were repealed, but should say insolvency rules 2016. But, you know, let's not split hairs. Pretty important and big hairs, but nonetheless, that's not what I'm here for. So the software, all you are going to do is hit start test in the exam, and that will commence your exam. Notice there is timekeeping, which appears to already be at 2 hours 59 minutes. So it appears to be working through. We believe the exam is going to be 3 hours 15, but I'm going to confirm that with the IPA. There's a few things that we will seek clarification for. not related to the exam software as such, but things around watches, clocks in the room, those types of things, or whether the countdown software is the most important thing, and whether the exam will be 3 hours or 3 hours 15, as they were discussing around reading time. So that may well change. Pretty simply, the software has got not a huge amount of functions at this point. You've got a calculator, which, I mean, you can type on. It's a bit fiddly for me, having to click on what you want. My understanding, as it has always been at CPI, is that you are able to take a calculator in with you as long as it's not programmable. But again, we'll confirm that with the IPA. I think you'll be more used to using a calculator sitting on your desk than clicking on this annoying little thing. There is, of course, a chance they say this is the only calculator you can take in, but I'd be surprised. It's worth noting, has to be covered at the end of this webcast, is that the numbers questions that you do, statement affairs, EOS, RMP, whatever you're required to do, the database function, which isn't really even a database function, just inserting a table, has no Excel style format, so it doesn't have equals, plus and minus. So calculate, this calculator or your own calculator is going to be important. It's certainly going to be needed in the exam. Notice the countdown timer is ticking down and out to 58. Good. There's a notepad. I mean, you can make notes in it. I have no idea why you would wish to, but again, we'll confirm with the IPA whether you will get a pen and paper to make any notes that you wish to. We do think that for the 15 mark questions, you are likely to want to do some plans and set out a bit of a strategy and an approach to answer the question. There's a reading ruler. Yeah, no idea. It appears to be some way we can sort of highlight where, so you can actually see a paragraph. I mean, not going to be needed, is my advice. Don't worry about it. There is a flag page, which I think is quite useful, actually. Many people, students, have said to me, don't see the point. I think it's quite useful if you have a question where you've maybe completed it, but you think, I could have typed more, but I want to move on for timing reasons. Just flag it to come back to. Or it's a question that was really hard and your brain just couldn't compute it at the time. You just want to flag it to say, if I get time, come back to it. The CPI exam, I don't think is massively time pressured. I think 3 hours or 3 hours 15, as is likely, is enough time to do what you want to do in the exam. So it's worth flagging up questions where you either want to come back to because you didn't think you did them justice, or come back to because you think, I moved on because I wanted to get through the rest of the exam, but I could go back and maybe type some more stuff. So you just flag the question. More on that, maybe I'll do some flagging as we go through, and then you can click on your navigation pane, which tells you which questions you've seen and which questions you've attempted and what they are worth. It's well worth just doing that, certainly before the end of the exam, and make sure you've answered every single question. Maybe you thought you ticked one of the multiple choice answers and you haven't, or those types of things, or you just missed a question altogether. Certainly in the short form, the 2 and 4 markers, you may have accidentally clicked twice and scanned over a question. Just do a double check. Maybe after completing a multiple choice, maybe after completing part B, maybe after each part, you just do a double check to make sure you've completed it. I think in the 15 mark questions, you'll know whether you've just spent half an hour on a question or not, but certainly those multiple choice and the short form ones are well worth considering. So then you just hit next and it brings up the questions. Now, online software can be daunting. We're used to writing it, but this is straightforward. It's the equivalent of ticking a box as opposed to sort of ticking a box with a pen. It's the same process. If anything, it's easier. So you're going to put your information in the answer. Maybe it's a guess, 8 weeks perhaps. Let's go for C, which allegedly with multiple choice questions it most commonly is. Don't rely on that as an exact science, of course. Don't just put C for everything in your exam, not least because that's not going to help you with written questions. And then you hit next. It's a bit slow, might be my Wi-Fi in sunny Norwich, but it's quick enough, it's efficient enough to do what we need to do. Pick the next one, and so on, and go through each multiple choice question. I'm just going to skip ahead because I've passed my CPI over 10 years ago. Makes me feel old to think about that. And you're just going through the questions. It's worth noting that this particular piece of software has the 2019 paper uploaded to it, so it's worth doing, worth covering. we will do a different one on our passing exam courses, because I think it's worth doing an exam on the software. We have copies of the answers. Just email us, and we can send them to you if you want to in full. So that's the 2019 paper. That's the only one that's uploaded to the software. So if you've had two separate links, it's both been the 2019 paper. The argument is this software is not really about attempting the exam. It's just familiarizing yourself with the software. So once you've completed that, you should have done 10 questions. At this point, you could just click your navigation mode and just double check that you've completed each question. As you can see, it's telling me that I only completed 2 out of the 10. So you probably won't have missed 8 out. You'd know that you've missed 8 out. You may have just missed question 9, and now you can go back and do question 9. The navigation pane actually allows you to click on that question. It takes you straight to that question, which is really useful. You don't have to click back and forward, back and next to get to exactly where you want to be. So now, if you go, which key section deals with the Act? I mean, this is 2019. They've sort of moved away from asking you section numbers around the Act, but it does occasionally appear on your CPI exam, particularly around antecedent transactions. So worth noting that question. Coincidentally, I stumbled across it, but there you go. And so on. So at the end of that, it now tells you you've finished part A. Go to navigation and check, and now you can move on to part B. Part B, nice and straightforward. It tells you 11 to 15 questions around London. Questions 11 to 15 are 2 marks, and questions 16 to 20 are 4 marks, which we know the exam form. You're going to be all over it. You're going to run loads of mocks, loads of practice. You know the format off by heart, but it does just give you that nice, polite reminder. And then the questions, luckily they actually tell you 1 mark per point up to 2 marks. It's really useful in the more modern CPI exams. It tells you how many marks. So for the 5 2-mark questions, it will tell you whether it's half a mark per point or 1 mark. If it's 1 mark per point up to 2 marks, you need to say 2 correct things to get the mark, obviously. It doesn't mean you're limited to only typing 2 things. Write as many as you can on that area. What powers may a liquidator nominated by the company utilize prior to being appointed by creditors? So it looks like we're being appointed by the members and not appointed by the creditors yet. I presume it's a CVL. It doesn't say, but not that it overly matters. So 1 mark per point up to 2. Now let's just guide you through some of the bits and pieces you have. We have cut, copy, and paste. I'm yet to really see any benefit to them. You can copy, I guess, some information. Let's say you had a really long word in the facts of the question you had to keep repeating, particularly in the 15 markers like qualifying floating charge holder. You could just copy it and then paste it wherever you need it in the answer. I mean, I much prefer doing brackets and putting QFC, and then you can use the abbreviation for the rest of your answer. So I'm not convinced. There are many occasions where cut, copy, and paste is going to be your best friend. I've not seen anything. This is important, the undo and redo button. So let's say you'd written something. Let's write something sensible. Let's write something that's wrong. QFC can be compromised. I'm making stuff up here. And then actually thought, I actually deleted it by accident. Hit the undo button. It's I don't see how you delete it. It's not like you're typing in cells or anything like that. So I'm not sure how you delete something. But if you accidentally made a mistake and accidentally deleted something, you can undo. And that's the best thing to do. If you have any incident of accidentally hitting the insert button or typing over something, or something happens, just hit undo as quickly as you can to get it back. Equally, you can redo and reapply what you had typed. Really useful, really handy, and exactly what we could need in the exam. Bold and underline, bold and italic and underline, should I say? I mean, looks pretty. I'm not that fussed, not least because when you're typing something, particularly in the 15 markers, you're having to click out of the cell to then put it in bold and underline. Let's just put a point in our answer that I think will probably be in the marking guide: sell perishable goods. So you could highlight and then bold it. You know, if it was a title or something like that, if you wanted to put it in bold, I'm not sure, other than making it look pretty, it's going to be necessary. the shortcuts work. First tip of the day from me, and maybe second tip. I think first tip was opening Chrome or Edge. Second tip, shortcuts work. Control B, Control C, Control X, Control V. Those types of things all work for copy, paste, bold, italics, underline. Those types of things work. So if you do want to put stuff in bold, they are there. I quite like using bold in the numbers answers. I'll show you that in a minute. But for the rest of it, I'm not that fussed about it. So, quite simply, not that fussed about any of these so far. A line left, a line right, not that fussed about justifying. Bullet points, this is where I think this is important. I would use bullet points for your 2 and 4 markers, but I would use the bullet points of numbered. So sell, look how neat this looks. If I was a marker, this would be a joy to mark. Sell perishable goods. I'm trying to think what else would go in this answer. I'll pick the bad one here. I guess you could consult the employees. That would still be probably the director's responsibility. Doesn't matter. No negative marking in CPI. Write as many things you can think of. Protect the assets. Preserve the assets. Insure the assets. Maybe that's all I can think of in my answer. Notice that it was 1 mark per point up to 2 things. So in theory, I need to type 2. I've typed 5. No negative marking in CPI. Type as much as you feasibly can in the time frame given for you. Good. You can decrease indent and increase indent. No need. You know, this isn't. You don't need to make it look pretty in any way in terms of indent. It doesn't make any sense to me. Notice a slight spelling mistake in here. Insure the assets. I would not worry too much about making everything perfect, but make sure your spelling is close enough to the word that you need that the marker can understand it. If they can't understand it, they can't award you the mark. That's the simple philosophy of a marker. The final 2 things we have here is insert table. You are not going to need that, I don't think, for any question other than a numbers question. Maybe if you had a proofs question where you wanted to sort of set it out between votes for and against or something like that on a question, a table could be useful, but I would predominantly only use this for a numbers type question. Finally, we have some special characters, copyright, some foreign characters, umlauts over your U's and accents, and you can even put a black club suit in your answer if you wanted to. Not quite sure why you would need that, but it's there just in case. Maybe the euro sign. I can't see how often you would use that. Percentage, maybe. Yeah, not convinced any of this is overly useful to you. And there you go. You are just simply typing in a answer. I like using the numbers just to show you that, the numbers bullet points, because then it tells you how many points you've written. That one's 1 mark per point up to 2 marks. So I need to type at least 2 things, maybe 2 and a bit, 3 or 4 things, which I've done. I can now safely move on. Haven't flagged it because I think I've done that justice. That's all I could think of. This one's half a mark up to 2 points. So I know if I use the number as bullet points, I'm going to need to type 4. Need to be right at least. So I need to type 4 and a half probably. So I'm going to type at least 6 things in my answer, which is great. So I type things, and it's each time it's giving me a bullet point by number. It tells me roughly what I need to include in my answer. And the marker will just mark the ones that are correct, ignore the ones that are wrong. Once they get up to a maximum of 2 marks or 4 correct things, they'll move on to your next question. Let's say I could only type 3 things and I know I needed at least 4, probably 5 or 6. At this point, I might just flag it and say, need to come back to that question. Didn't do it justice. And move on to your next question. And again, I just think it's all about the bullet points here. Every single 2 or 4 marker, do your bullet points, flagging it as necessary. And so on and so on. Notice the 4 markers tell you if it's half a mark per point or 1 mark per point also. So again, even though it's a 4 marker, it's still short and snappy answers for the short form question. They're called short form questions. So you can write the steps. Even this one says detail the content of the declaration and practical matters to be considered. But you can still keep it short and snappy. A statement of assets and liabilities is to be included. Statement of assets and liabilities. Statement of whether you've made an inquiry and you are of the opinion that can be paid in 12 months. Nice. And again, type your answers, bullet point format, write them in decent sentences, in decent short form so they make sense, but short form writing, bullet point format is fine at this point. And again, just go through each question, make sure you type your answer to each one, never leave a subpart blank. Have a stab at each question, even if it is a bit of a mean question, have a go at it. And when you complete this answer, it then moves you on to part C. So be familiar with the various formats of this. Part C is now your 15 markers. We've done multiple choice, part A, 10 marks. Short form, 5 2 markers, 5 4 markers, another 30 marks, giving you a total out of 40. I would spend about an hour on that. Now move on to part C, which is your 2 15-mark compulsory questions. I'm not going to go into in depth about exam tips here. This is about how to use the software. Now notice, it's now brought up question 21, which was predominantly a numbers question. I think it's 7 marks for numbers. I can't see because my webcam's in the way. 9 marks, half a mark up to 9 marks. And there are some boxes. So again, there's still typing boxes here available for each question, A, B, and C. And what they've done with numbers is they've parked them next to each other. I presume, I didn't create the software, so you can read the numbers and do your numbers answer next to them. I'm going to come back to that. I'm going to come back to question 21 if it's okay with you. Not that you're going to answer me at this point. I just want to do the written question first and finish on numbers, because I think numbers are the most daunting aspect of it. Let's look at question 22, which is a full typed question. George Potter, the bankrupt, declared bankrupt, and the requirement is state with reasons how you would deal with each of the proofs and whether they would be admitted for dividend purposes and for what sum. Half a mark up to 6. So you've got Gray's Casino, bankrupt spouse, HMRC, former bankrupt's friend, etc. So at this point, you've got a number of choices. Nice big box. You've got a box for each subpart. 6 marks, 3 marks, and 6 marks. Make sure you type in the right box. Now, at this point, I would probably ditch the bullet points. I don't like listing things. I think it stops you writing in full sentences. Also, from a marker, it's harder to mark. I like clear titles. So I'm going to answer part I, which is a claim by the bankrupt's spouse. So look at this. Nice clear heading. Markers are trained to mark the subheadings. Use a nice heading. I'm just using capitals. I'm not clicking out of the cell or using Control B to bold it or underline it. Capitals is far easier because I can type it without having to click out of the cell. So it's a spouse. You would write your answer around the law as you believe it, as you believe it to be. Type your sentence. And there there is your answer. I like that over bullet points. So a spouse's claim would be deferred. Section. I'm testing myself. I can't believe I've even done it. I think it's section 328. It's corporate insolvency predominantly, but I'm pretty sure that's right. Section 328. Doesn't really matter. Spouse's claim would be deferred, so they're only paid after the payment, of other creditors plus interest. I like the use of an ellipsis here, 3 dots, just to say I'm going to write something else, but it's kind of linked. I'm just dividing up my answer, and I want an extra half a mark for it. I then like using the facts as possible. Here, the claim of 3,500 would be paid after all creditors. It appears to indicate they were married. It's not worded brilliantly. It was after they were married. So yeah, it indicates that it was at the time they were married, as opposed to before. It was before they'd be an ordinary trade and expense creditor. And then next, go on to the next subpart. I. Easy as that. You are going through typing your answer. I like the clear headings approach. It's easier to mark. It's got a bit more flow about it, and it encourages you to write in full sentences. I'm not saying you can't bullet point, and the IPA and the ICSA are certainly not saying that, But if this is a typed essay question, I would like you to do it. Note my answer has a heading, types the law, leaves a space between each one. What's brilliant about this is it automatically sets a space, so paragraphs are out. That is incredibly easy to mark for an examiner and fits in with NTI's approach to styling your answers that we've always done, even when it was a written exam. So I like this: capital headings, write the law, move on to the next paragraph. The reality is, dead easy now it's on the online software. This is way easier than those having to write an answer, particularly if you had horrendous handwriting. And that's it. Type your answer, move on to the next question. Flag it if you think you've got anything else to say. Dead easy. The hardest part of this software, I'm just going to cover in the last 10 minutes of this webinar, is the numbers questions. And this is where my hints and tips will come in. First things first, spot when it's a numbers question. Okay, so this is an estimated outcome statement for 9 marks. Loads of facts and figures in here. First thing I would suggest you do is familiarize yourself. Everything here is the same. It's important with numbers that you lay it out neatly. I've tried it both ways, just typing your answer, just going for goodwill here, and trying to put a pound sign in place. Now notice that my screen just went funny and scrolled down for no reason. That was because I tried to tab, which I would on a Word document, to put where I want the numbers. It doesn't work. A tab button that doesn't work. So I have to put a space if I then wanted to put over here, 500,000. For me, it doesn't work. I think you've got to insert a table. So your numbers question. Next tip, numbers question is here. It looks as though they're going to put it side by side with your answer, which is a bit annoying because it's then restricted the size of this box. But this is worth noting. Look here. Look at these 3 dots. 3 dots down the middle of the page. You can drag, so you can make that as wide as you want, and then make your typing space a bit wider. That is incredibly useful for your ability to answer the question. It makes this box a bit wider. I would do that. Make sure you can see the answer and there's enough information to be seen. Don't make this so small that you can't see the numbers, of course, but maybe about a quarter or a third of the way across the page should be the question, and then your answer has loads and loads of space. Next top tip, it's a numbers question. If you've got a pen and paper, if you're allowed, we believe the IPA will allow that, just jot down how many columns you need. You can add columns later, but it's worth thinking about. So this is an EOS. I'll need a column for the opening line where I'm going to put the assets and stuff. You always need that opening line. Then I maybe need a column for notes. Then I may need a column for book value if it's given. Not always for an EOS do you need book value. And then you'll need a column for estimated outcome, estimated to realize. Some estimated outcome statements have realized to date and then future realization, so then you need an extra column. And then I'd always add one just so you've got it in there. So I need estimated outcome statement, the opening column, book value, estimated to realize, and then another column. So that's 4. Plus 1 is 5. The table allows you to set it out. How many rows do you want? So I want 5, and it allows you a maximum of 10 rows down. So 5 columns and then 10 down, and it inserts the table for you. Then it brings up this extra box: table properties, delete table, insert row before, insert row after, delete row, insert column before, insert column after, and delete column. So nice and easy. First thing I would do is just insert row after, and click that as many times as you possibly can, just right at the start of the answer, so you now have more than enough rows to complete it. Just click that maybe 20, 25 times, just give you enough rows that you'll need in the exam. Your next job, drag the opening cell to a decent width to be able to put your first column, and just make it so your first job really is to make the pro form what you want it. It's a bit fiddly, but I think you're actually going to save time in the long run by getting this all set up in the initial stages. Drag that across and just spend a bit of time making this the way you would want it. That's going to be a book value column. That's going to be your estimated to realize column. It's a bit fiddly, but once you're there, it's so worth it. Actually, that's going to be a notes column. That's your estimated to realize, and that's your book value. So we're just then going to type it up, nice and easy. got the caps lock on, book value. Done. Now, pretty simple now. Estimated outcome statement, you're going to have fixed charge assets. At this point, I quite like my titles in bold. You can control V if you really want to lay it out neatly. It's not the end of the world if you don't, but nice and easy. There's some goodwill in the question. I'm skipping through this easy. You'd have to go and find it. Goodwill in the question. Book value, it doesn't appear to have given me the book values in hindsight, so maybe I'm not going to need them. £1,000. Hot tip, put the comma in. You get a question where the numbers are in the millions without the comma, it's hard to see. It doesn't have the Excel format around putting commas in for you, but you can just plug the figures in. Goodwill, intellectual property, I'm going to write it as IP, but you would need to write in full in the exam, 100,000. Look, again, I just put the comma in. So it's easy for me to see. And then I would put total fixed charge assets. I quite like when I'm doing totals. It's not Excel, so it doesn't have the nice thing where I can put an underline over the cell to show it. So I'm going to put my totals in bold. Nice little tip, stands out for the examiner. They can mark to them. Look at that, total fixed charge assets. Nice and easy. Less due to fixed charge holder. Actually, we'd have costs next, wouldn't we? Less costs. Agent fees. I'm not going to look at the questions. I'm just going to make them up for the purpose of this. Put it in brackets for a minus. And let's say there's some solicitor's fees. I haven't checked the question, but this is only to demonstrate software working. 10,000. So total costs. £20,000. And bold it off. Now notice there are no formulas. You can't equals, plus or minus. It's not a database. This is just a table. So it's very important to get the table set up the way you want it in advance. And then less due to bank. Whatever, 1 million. But look, when I type a million, it's so much easier to read when I've got the comma in there. Whatever they're owed. So you can't equals, plus or minus. This is where you can use your calculator. And in the exam, you'll just type it. Actually, the calculator bar seems to have disappeared at this point, which is helpful. No, it's down here. But again, if you've got a calculator exam, I think it'd be easier to do it yourself on a calculator and work it out. There are no equals, plus or minus. There's no sum buttons. You are going to have to do the calculations manually and put them in. But you know what? A student said this to me, and this is my view, to be a bit patronizing here, is before this electronic software, you would have to have written it out anyway. So this is an upgrade on that. You can put it in a table. You're still going to have to do the calculations as you would have had to, but at least it's set out a bit neater for you. And once you've done that, it's dead easy. I like the bolding of the totals. So then you'd have efficiency to fixed charge, whatever that may be. So I can't sum it, but I need to do 110 minus 20 is 90,000, less a million would be 920,000 pound, 910,000 deficit, or whatever it may be. It doesn't matter, but you would be adding it up on your calculator and making sure you get that right. And again, it's total, so I'm just bolding it, bringing it out, and that's it. That is the simplicity of it. Set the table up. That's the most important thing. Once you've got that, it's dead easy. If you do forget to put a notes column in, let's say you didn't have that notes column, you can simply just insert rows, delete rows, or insert columns. So if I wanted a column to the side of my notes here, I can just insert a column and it will add one. Then you might just have to quickly rejig the size of your rows, but there you go. Now I could put my notes column in. Annoyingly, once you start adding columns, it goes off the page. I would try, if you can, to keep it so you don't have to do too much scrolling. So make that a bit smaller, make that a bit smaller if you can. I would rather be able to see everything that I'm using as opposed to being having to scroll. That makes sense. Why setting up the spreadsheet is the most important thing. It's a bit fiddly. It's not ideal, but once you get it, it's worthwhile doing. Now, actually, I can see everything I need on that screen. If you don't want the row, oops, I've just deleted something I didn't want to delete. Hit undo as soon as you can, brings it back. what I wanted to do is delete that column. So it's the one that I'm clicked in, and now I'm back to where I was. Nice and easy. Finally, your notes column. You have two choices. For joint board exams on a similar software, database software, I encourage the notes to go there, and you actually type them next to it. So I could write, assume goodwill is fixed asset. I don't actually like that for this software. I much prefer doing what we would always do with our numbers and making a note here, having a note here, and having our notes right down the bottom of the page. That way you're not having to do the scrolling to find your notes. You have notes, and you have note number 1, goodwill, and you can do your calculations in your notes down here. Assume fixed asset 10,000 times 10% or whatever. And it's then easy to follow. And just do your notes in here. Clearly mark where your note is, and then do that at the bottom of the page. So actually, it's dead easy once you've got this in place. You can add rows, you can add columns. I advise you to add loads and loads of rows so you've got enough as soon as you do it. Your notes will be at the bottom, and the examiner will have to scroll and see everything you've typed. And it's dead easy. It's annoying that it doesn't have the sum functions. It's not a database spreadsheet, but we need just to get on with it. We need to accept it and note that it's still a bit nicer than having to use pen and paper. And then you are done. Type your answers in the boxes, type your numbers into a table as you go through, and then finish the exam. So typing, just type as normal. Part D, only answer 2 out of the 3. So again, you can just double check by going to the navigation page which ones you've done, which ones you haven't. So I need to go back to question 12. Oh, I think I've only done one of the questions in part C, incomplete here. And you can just double check. It even tells you when you haven't seen the question, which is ideal. Hit finish when you finish the exam. And it brings up the navigation pane for you just to double check that you've done everything you wanted, and then you hit finish. Alternatively, the clock will tick down to 0 and will finish the exam for you. And that is it. That is the exam software. Nice and easy. The boxes are there. Type your answers. Use capitals for headings. Avoid bold. If there's a numbers question, drag the cell so you can see them side by side. Input the information into a table that you've already set up and got ready. Get the pro forma down, get the table ready, plug the figures into the table using your calculator as you go, and it's not as horrid as you first thought. Doable, and it's easy. And that is the IPA ICSA software. If you have any questions, NTI are always on hand to help you navigate it and to think about it. If you need us, get in contact with us. We'd be delighted to hear from you. It's rb@nti.co.uk. Thanks for watching today. I hope you found it useful. Goodbye.